control the vertical.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthology with your host Mark. Today we are covering a series from 1981. It's called Darkroom. It's a kind of thriller drama anthology series with a touch of science fiction, and I believe also the touch of horror. It only aired for 7 episodes from November 27th, 1981 to January 15th, 1982. So at the time of recording this, it's almost 28 years old. The very first episode being aired is nearly 28 years ago. It owes a debt to sort of the Night Gallery and possibly something like Alfred Hitchcock's Thriller. Its structure is it's 48 minutes, I guess an hour when it was aired with advertisements, and its structure is 2, possibly 3 stories wrapped up in that time, and they're all varying length, so one may be longer than the other, and as was the case on this first one I watched. It now what was interesting, it was hosted by James Coburn of all people, a fairly big star back in the day. James Coburn hosts and gives us a little intro. There's a standard intro where there's like a dolly shots through a spooky looking house and stuff like that. And then it gives you a little intro into the story. If the style is a bit EC Comics, it's a bit Night Gallery, so it's familiar fare. It preceded things like Tales from the Crypt, Tales from the Dark Side, but it had that kind of feel. And it often involved older stars from TV or up-and-coming stars. For example, a very young Helen Hunt appears in one episode, but a rather old Claude Akins appears in another. It's that kind of thing. David Carradine appeared. Billy Crystal appeared. That was a up-and-comer. Brian Dennehy and so on in various episodes. However, the one we're going to talk about tonight, slightly less well-known people involved, but we'll get into it. The one I watched was episode 1, and it had 2 stories. The first story was called Closed Circuit. Yeah, this was a kind of a TV version of something like The Manchurian Candidate, or if there's quite a good Rock Hudson film from the 60s, I think, called Seconds, where they sort of reconstruct plastic surgery and people are recreated. And it's got that thing. Basically, an aging TV anchor figures out someone that he's seeing that he hasn't seen in ages. Doesn't see him himself, and he kind of can't figure it out. Now, turns out that he uncovers something here, and there's some sort of weird simulation going on, computer generated or technology generated simulation, and they're replacing sort of aging TV stars with non-aging replications, so they can just keep running them at the height of their powers, and the promise is, if you sign up to this, you can just go and enjoy yourself. We'll just use your facsimile and it'll be fine, and it kind of goes on from there, and there's a sting in the tail. It stars Robert Webber, who's a kind of, if you saw him, you'd probably recognise him. Certainly, if you're an older person, he was in a lot of American TV in their sort of 70s and early 80s. Things like Kojak, Cannon, that kind of thing. He was actually in a film. I remember him in a film. It was quite effective, called "Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia." He played a gangster type. He was pretty good at it. However, in this, he's like a smooth TV anchor. It's fairly convincing as such. And I also have to mention a few other people involved. You would know there was Richard Anderson, who was famous for playing Oscar Goldman in the $6 Million Man. That's probably his most famous role, but he was also in the second Night Stalker movie, Kolchak movie. And also an actor called John Randolph, who I know best as one of the older grandpa types from National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, which, you know, given that we're coming up to December, at least some of you will be watching again. He's Clark's dad in that movie, and he's the one that raises the suspicions of the main character. Yeah. And find out what's going on. Anyway, there's a bit of a twist now, and it was fine. This was a longer episode. This was about 35 minutes of the whole thing, so this took up quite a bit of room, and it was kind of okay. I found this on YouTube, so you should, if you're interested in going and have a look, it is on YouTube. Not the best quality, but it was watchable. Yeah, it was okay. Let's put it that way. Not bad. Fairly predictable. You kind of knew what was coming, I think. They weren't as horrible in the final twist as I thought they were going to be, but it was still pretty bad. Anyway, yeah, so there was that one. The second story on this episode was called Stay Tuned, We'll Be Right Back. Interesting one, very short story. A guy is building a crystal radio with his son, and they seem to tune into an old radio station, like playing 40s, and then he finds out it actually is broadcasting for 40s, and he knows the exact date and time, and he can get all the channels, and he was wondering if it's bouncing off some asteroid or planetary body, or, you know, something out in the solar system is bouncing stuff back from all back then. But he becomes convinced he can possibly work two ways, and he also he picks up a code, and he knows it's a German signal for a U-boat to destroy a certain ship. And it turns out his father died on that ship when a U-boat torpedoed it, and he figures out he can try and intercept it to change things. And his wife's saying, "This is crazy. You cannot change history, and yeah, this is nonsense. This is just some old channel." But anyway, he goes ahead and does it. And there's a sting in the tail. And again, seen this kind of story before. I've seen it in comic books at least, you know, where it's the whole butterfly, you know, the butterfly effect. One little change in the temporal thing and the whole of history can unravel, and that kind of happens. And it's kind of a nifty ending. I quite like this one. I couldn't quite figure out how it was going to go. I had some ideas, and it was kind of, this really made sense when it actually happened, the ending. So again, I don't want to spoil it, but it was a slightly more satisfying experience actually than the first story. So yeah, not bad. It wasn't great, and it was funny because I was looking at some of the reviews on this, and one of us is, "Oh, Rod Serling, what have you done?" It's going to be compared to sort of Rod Serling's work and not stand up to a very good comparison, actually. That's one of the problems of it. But it was fair enough. I could kind of see, just seeing this first one, why it only lasted 7 episodes. I could kind of see this didn't really have the legs with it. It wasn't put together as well as some other shows of its type. And possibly this format was kind of dated or just not suitable for the time as well. There might be a bit of that. But yeah, it was okay. I didn't mind it. As I say, it's on YouTube, so go judge for yourself. I kind of like the hokey beginning, and it's kind of fun to see James Coburn getting involved in stuff like this. And as I say, some of the later episodes involves fairly either actors slightly more famous than the ones here, or up-and-comers like Billy Crystal and Helen Hunt. Up-and-comers at the time, anyway. So it's got that kind of interest about it. Okay, let's sign off there. But one last question. Is anybody out there?
We now return control of your television set to you. Until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to